Good morning. Okay, there we go. As per usual, just trying to find the Facebook. Figure out the Facebook. There we go. Okay, got it. got it. Here we are live. Oh, that's gonna annoy me. The little inconsistency there. That's annoying. Finally put my curtain up back there. So now I have like somewhat balanced white balance on Facebook. If you're watching on Facebook, you might notice that I have a somewhat much better balanced white balance because got my lighting back. You're welcome. Yeah. Whew. Okay. It is Monday. Monday the 13th. Oh, December. Golly. Yes. Here we are. And these are some live office hours with me, Dr. Shannon Coates. Boop, boop, boop. And I am here live, coming to you live from my home office, as you may or may not have guessed, which is on the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinabaweke, the Mississauga, and the Wendat-Sioux peoples, which is about 20, no, a little longer than that, 40 minutes north of Toronto. So normally on Monday live office hours, I talk a little bit about like something applicable to the voice studio, some kind of like technical exercise or something along those lines. But if you are interested in something like that, then maybe take a look either on Vimeo, my Vimeo channel, YouTube channel. I have all these channels. I don't know where to direct people really, but if you're on Facebook, you can scroll through Facebook, although it's a little more challenging to find things on Facebook than say on Vimeo or YouTube, where you can just like search. Or you can look at the IGTV stuff if you're into Instagram. But yeah, so take a look at something like that, because today I wanted to do, lots of people have been asking. So because the Vocal Instrument 101, I created an online course called the Vocal Instrument 101, and it's 3 years old now. What? So it's on sale for December, the month of December. 30% off, because 3 years and 30. You're welcome. And so because it's on sale, and I've been kind of talking to people about it and promoting it and all that stuff, I have had some questions about what exactly is it and what's going on with that thing and all that stuff. So I wanted to do a little bit of a the who, what, where, why of the Vocal Instrument 101. So in case you did not know and maybe missed that first entry there, someone in my house just flushed the toilet. I love that they're flushing the toilet. Amazing, but who knows whether you could hear it or not. So professional. Oh. Okay. So the Vocal Instrument 101. Folks, if you're watching on Facebook, I would love to get some feedback as to how the audio is. I think it's fine, but I would love to get some feedback on that if you're watching on Facebook, by the way. Anyway, so yes, the Vocal Instrument 101 online course. Oh, yes, exactly, Bianca. So Bianca says you can't hear it, but let's all be glad that they did flush. Yes, exactly right. Let's look on the bright side, right? Let's look on the bright side. Heavens. Anyway, super professional. Online course, self-directed course. And I created this course because I had the opportunity, first of all, I had the opportunity to do a voice pedagogy course in my undergraduate degree. So I was, like 22 or 21 or however old I was, and taking voice pedagogy in the third year of my undergrad degree. And so first of all, lots of people don't have the opportunity to do that just to begin with. But secondly, when you're 21, 22, I don't know, I shouldn't speak for 20, like young 20s everywhere, but like, let me just say that information that I learned in my undergrad course, which was a terrific course, we used Barbara Doscher's text, and the name is what's it called? The Functional Unity of the Singing Voice. So we used Barbara Doscher's text. It was Professor Lorna MacDonald at the University of Toronto who taught that course, and we had a teaching practicum as well. So it was a terrific course. It's actually the course that I teach now, and the course that I teach now, I based very much on what she already had in place. Like, terrific course. So, but the thing is that when you're like 20, you don't realize how important this information is actually going to be, right? So you learn the information and you write the tests and you do the assessments and you do the teaching and that's all great, but you don't realize how the lack of how that information isn't exactly going to like stick with you, especially if you're like me, like what I did, where I didn't start teaching until I was in my, let me just think now. I didn't teach until about 10 years after I had left school. So, after I'd taken that course. So, like I didn't have that direct application. It wasn't like I was like taking that information and going directly to teaching and learning how to, really applying it. I mean, I did in the course, but just for however long that course was, right? So when I started to teach, I did have that great background, except that I didn't remember anything. And I still had the text, but I didn't I wasn't, first of all, I also, when I first started to teach, I wasn't teaching Western classical singers who were 18 years old. I was teaching like little kids and music theater and rock pop. Like I was not, when I first started to teach, I taught at a school, right? So at a music school. So whoever came in my door, that's who I was teaching. Like I had like maybe three classical musicians, three Western classical singers in my studio who I felt like I knew what I was doing when I was teaching them, because they were they were studying something that I had studied, right? So when I went back to school, I had the privilege of being able to go back to school and do a master's in voice pedagogy, and then to do a doctorate in voice pedagogy. And I had the privilege to be able to do that. Very supportive partner. I had young children at the time, so very supportive partner who was able to help out, had who was able to really partner in raising kids and all that stuff. And then my parents were able to help us. I had all of the right circumstances to be able to go back to school. And I also happened to live close enough. Like I said, I'm about 45 minutes north of Toronto, so I happened to live close enough to a terrific program with a terrific faculty, right? So all of these things, there's just lots of privilege involved in me being able to do that and go back to school. And also I taught all the way through going back to school. So when I started to teach undergraduate voice pedagogy classes at the University of Toronto, and as I started to teach those classes, I also realized, me going back to school when I was older, and when I had already had that teaching experience, and when I had all of that teaching experience in an independent voice studio outside of academia, it really made me realize, a lot of the information that that we get in academia isn't necessarily geared toward independent voice teachers and toward teaching the folks who we teach, and toward setting up an independent voice studio and how to run a business. Like, that information isn't necessarily in our programs. I mean, it's certainly coming more into our programs, but it wasn't, definitely when I did my undergrad, that wasn't what it was geared toward, right? So even though it was a terrific class, it just wasn't geared toward who I was actually going to be teaching in real life. And then even when I did my master's and my doctorate, I was able to do some some shaping because I knew what I wanted, because I knew who I was teaching, right? So a lot of folks who were with me in that cohort hadn't taught very much at all, and so they didn't really even know what was out there or what they were going to be expected to be doing. So they didn't have the same kind of ability to be able to sort of steer what they wanted to learn, or to really say, hey, this is what I want to learn. So I realized that about our academic programs, first of all, which became more and more clear to me as I went through. And then when I started to teach undergraduate voice pedagogy classes, I also then, as I was starting to talk to my colleagues, my independent voice colleagues, independent studio colleagues, we're talking to them, and as I had more interaction, and as I started to adjudicate more and get out there more, in terms of, working with colleagues and doing a little bit more education, and I started to just say, this information is not necessarily readily available to independent voice teachers in a way that is this information about the voice and about how the voice works and the sort of anatomy and physiology of sound, just how sound works, right? And all of that information that isn't readily available to voice teachers, not only in a way that is geared to independent voice teachers from someone who knows what it's like to work in an independent voice studio and who really truly understands, what it's like to teach 6-year-olds and what it's like to teach lots and lots of teens who don't practice, God love them all, but they don't, and what it's like to teach, to work with adult avocational singers. And I'm fond of saying, when I first started to teach, I was working with, and still, have been up until the last little while, working with some of the finest adult avocational singers on the planet. And they've done Messiah so many times that they're doing it, from memory. They don't need the score anymore, these folks have done incredible singing. And so here I am working with, anyway, I know the student population, right? I know who you're teaching, and I know the information that's needed to teach that level. And then I also know, or to teach that student population. And then I also know that it's just not practical or worth it for the majority of independent voice teachers to go back to school to get a degree like I did, right? It's just not practical. It happened to be the thing that I was able to do, and happened to be, something that I enjoyed and wanted to do. Lots of sacrifices there too. Let's not get that, let's be clear about that. My kids, I think just a couple of years ago, we realized we'd crossed that border between them being, so I went back to school when my kids were 3 and 5, and then I was in school for 6 years. So then 11, yeah. So now they're 18 and 16, and this is the first year that they've had more years of me, consciously, of me being not in school than of me being in school, where they're conscious of me, not being in school. Anyway, it's crazy. Anyway. So I had the privilege to be able to do that, but that is not the way that the majority of independent voice teachers can get their information and can get that continuing education. So then as I started to, develop the undergraduate voice pedagogy curriculum and build on what was already there, of course, and start to develop that more, I started to actually do live classes for voice teachers, where I was like, look, I'm going to do a 3-hour download of what I teach in my undergraduate voice ped class. It's going to be different because you're coming to me with experiential understanding of all of these things I'm talking about, right? In terms of teaching these things, right? In my undergraduate voice ped class, for the most part, they're coming in their only experiential understanding is from themselves, right? From what they feel in themselves. But when I talk to voice teachers, they have an experiential understanding of how these things works from the outside and from the inside, right? From not only working with themselves, but like working on their own voice, but working with students in the studio. So they have an experiential, we have this experiential understanding. So what I'm doing in these classes is just kind of saying, here's the reason all of this happens. Here's the reason these things work, and here's the reason we say not to do these things, and here's the reason that this is, that this is going to help with these things, and here's the reason that you've already figured out that these things don't help. So basically, as I was going around and talking to people and talking to choirs, often I talk to choirs, and doing these live sessions, especially at the time before COVID, when, it was all, in person live. I just started, like, this information, I want it to be available to anybody who wants it, not just who I can get to in, like, a 3-hour driving radius, right? Like, anybody who wants it, I want this information to be available. So, it's 3 years old, so what are we in, 2018? So in 2018, I started to make recordings. The summer of 2018, I was making recordings, putting together, the text and getting drawings together and all that kind of thing, and getting everything together. And then it was finished. We did some pre-sales and, had some modules already out by the time I started some pre-sales, and then it was completely finished by December 2018, which is why we're at our 3-year anniversary. And so what the online course is really specifically for independent voice teachers, also singers, adult singers, or, mature singers if they want to have a better understanding of how the voice works. But it really is geared toward independent voice teachers who perhaps you did an undergrad voice ped class like I did, and it was just a million years ago, and like, who remembers that information? Or perhaps you didn't do an undergraduate voice ped class, or perhaps, and it's geared for folks who love to learn in a self-guided way. So there are 8 modules. The first module is the science of sound, and it just really like breaks down harmonics and how we create harmonics, or how we create sound waves, and what sound waves are, and how sound waves can be formed by the resonator that they travel through, and can be shaped by how they travel through a resonator. And then the first 2 modules, the second and third modules are like, they kind of go together. One is Respiration 101, which is just the anatomy and physiology of breathing, of what happens in the breathing. We look at some of the musculature, we look at how everybody works together. And then Breathing for Singing 101. Gosh, I should have pulled out the actual titles. I can't remember. Hello. Oh, hi, Jennifer. Oh, I'm so glad. Oh, I am so glad to hear that. I'm so glad, Jennifer. On breathy versus pressed. Yeah. So this is part of it too, right? Like, we have this, as we have this deeper understanding. I have confidence in how just get in there. Oh, good. Thank you. I'm glad you're excited for it, Jennifer. But like, this is the whole reason. I'm going through the second and third modules are on breathing, and then how we apply it to singing. The third and fourth modules are on, I can't remember whether I did phonation and then resonance. I think I did phonation first, so the vibrator, and then phonation. So basically how the vocal folds work to create, and what they contribute to the sound, and how they create sound, and what they look like also. And then fifth and sixth, am I wrong about that? Am I there already? Or sixth and seventh, I can't remember now, are on resonance and the resonator. So we talk about the vocal tract and all the different areas of the vocal tract, what they can do, how shaping the vocal tract in specific ways contributes to tonal outcomes, what we, and I also take a little bit apart, I talk a little bit about um, how our Western classical training, and especially if we've been in choirs, really encourages a specific kind of vocal tract shaping, and how that kind of vocal tract shaping isn't necessarily useful for, some of our other styles. If you're teaching, there's a little bit of a contemporary versus classical kind of breakdown in there as well, in terms of shaping and how we use shaping to change styles. There's a little bit on vowels. There's a little bit on formants too. It's real, like there's this much on formants, but there is enough in there just so that I want people to actually have that. It's 101, but I want people to have that like sort of basic is the wrong word, fundamental understanding and that fundamental information. And then the final module is just kind of bringing it all together and talking about how everything works together, how everything comes together, and how we work with the body as a whole, in the voice studio. So this is not a sort of how to teach course in any way. That's not what it is. Although there's lots of information about, how you might apply this in the studio, or why we might use this specific way of talking about something because it helps with this. Like there's lots of information that way, but this isn't a, how to teach. It's not a pedagogy in that way. It is really about the basics of the anatomy and physiology of the voice, really about, and basics is the wrong word, the fundamentals of the anatomy and physiology of the voice. Basics makes it sound like it's not like very good or something. It's like just the basics, but it's very good, and it's fundamentals. And then it's, like I said, it's I think it's about 4 to 4.5 hours of course material. So because it's the 3rd anniversary, I added a workbook. So there's some workbook. It's a foundational backing. Exactly, Bianca. So it has the information. Honestly, it's the information that I wish I could just sort of download, like matrix style, like it's all of the fundamental information. And folks who have been teaching for a while, or even just a little bit, and folks who have taken voice lessons and who have trained, are consistently, the feedback that I hear from folks who've done the course is, a couple of things. One is like, this was way more fun than I expected it to be, like because I do I do all the drawings myself, almost all of the drawings myself on my whiteboard, and my drawing skills are terrible, just terrible. So I'm making fun of myself the whole way through. You're welcome. So there is some small entertainment value just because of who I am, the way that I work, and the way that I like to lecture, right? There's a little bit of entertainment value there. But so lots of folks say, yeah, this is way more fun than I thought it was going to be. And also lots of folks talking about, okay, the clarity of information, so much, I understand things so much more better, good, so much better than I did. And also even something like formants. I've had several people say that the section on resonance and formants was so, oh, good. Yeah. Tanisha, yeah. There are examples of how the pedagogy relates to the singing output. Exactly. So it's not a how to teach in that way, but it's a like, here's how this works, and here's how this works, and here's how this works, and here's how it affects the tonal outcome, and here's how we get to these sounds because of these things. So it is eminently practical. And the other thing that people say all the time is that they feel validated, supported, like, okay, I actually did have this information, I just didn't know that I had it, right? Or I was already teaching this way, or I'd already figured this out, but I didn't realize why. So lots and lots of folks talk about feeling so much validation around the way that they're teaching and what they're already doing, and the things that they already have in place, or the things they've already experienced. Like I said, we come to this experientially if we haven't done the explicit, if we don't know the explicit information, right? So this just gives you the explicit information around lots of things that you likely already know, but this will then give you that validation, like, oh yeah, that's why. Or here's the reason, yeah. So that's my spiel. If you have questions about it, do feel free to just let me know. I'm going to be doing a few more kind of Q&A kind of things as we go through the month, just so that I just want people to know that it's there and it's available and it's it's there. It's a tool. And like I said, I developed it really truly for independent voice teachers who want to get that. It's a real distillation of the first term of a voice ped course. Or I shouldn't say a voice ped course, of the voice ped course that I teach. It is a distillation. So my first term of voice ped course is 12 hours. So this is, under half of that, but is 12 hours of lectures. Yes, 12 hours. So this is under half of that, but distilled. So it's super distilled. And the modules are no longer than 20 minutes long. I mean, if I were to do it again, I would make the sections like 10 minutes max, but it's all good. So they're no longer than 20 minutes long, but you can, you can listen to me on like 1.5 times if you want. You can go back and forth and you can listen and then you have access to it for, I'm going to say for eternity, although I'm pretty sure lawyers don't want me to say that. But you'll have access to it for a long time. All right. Take good care. Have a great week. Send me any questions if you have them. I would love to hear them. Take care. Okay. Let's ending.